What is up, everybody? Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. This is the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations. I am also the 2018 award winner for innovation by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association, and it's the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. And people are going to say, this is weird for me to say this, but I have to say to these two people, Happy New Year, because they haven't been on since December. They sort of freaked out when they said, been that long? Yeah, it's been a minute, and it's getting to an hour since they've been with us. But thank goodness they are back in the saddle again, as Aerosmith would say. We got Beth and Bryan back. For those who don't know them, they will introduce themselves because they're very fun and wonderful people. And we're going to be continuing, I don't know if we're going to be continuing or relaunching an epic conversation called Converting Religious Shame to Soulful Intimacy. We've done 2 parts already. This is part 3, but I have a feeling we're going to be going onward because it's been so long, but we'll see what happens. We have a lot of fun here. Just want to shout out to the people already in the Get Vocal room. Herbie, E.T., and Tony, thanks very much for stopping by. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. And if you guys want to jump in, we make room for good people like yourselves. So first off, want to reintroduce Beth Ostrander, so she'll have to introduce herself again, which is not a bad thing. So what is up, Beth?
Hey. Beth Ostrander. I met you.
I cannot hear you. So I'm going to relaunch. Just give me a second. For some reason, I can't hear, so I'm going to just relaunch again. Hold on.
All right.
Holding on.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you, Bryan, and see you, Bryan, but I can't see Beth now. So, Bryan, go ahead and introduce yourself first. We always have fun here.
We always have fun. All right. I am Bryan Duarte. This is time number 3 on the Dr. Vibe show. I am a engineer by education, and in practice, I'm an entrepreneur. And also, as we get Beth back on here, I have been a client of Beth's years ago. And since then, we have been working together as the opportunities arise and talking together. Love to talk about the topic around sex and intimacy, especially when it falls over into the area of religion, having grown up Catholic in a very strong religious household, and lots of shame and guilt involved in that. So it's good to have the conversation and to move through and evolve quite dramatically over the years. So that's where I'll start off with. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. And we thought she ran away from us, but we won't let her go. Beth Ostrander's in the house. What is up, Beth?
Hi, can you hear me okay now?
Can hear you okay. I know you like being a disruptor. That's all right. That's your style.
I do. I don't actually. I flip-flop.
Okay.
Yes. So, and it
good girl, bad girl.
It relates to this conversation. Yes. So I'm Beth Ostrander, pleasure coach, speaker, workshop facilitator, and I have been, recovering accountant. I should throw that in there.
Hold on a second. What's a recovering accountant?
I do it as little as possible. I don't do numbers often. My own, not even really. So, but friends ask me every once in a while.
Second. Based on the subject, be very careful with your wording. I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. I used to do accounting in my past life.
Okay, that sounds better, because there was some very suspicious wording that you were doing, like numbers and what's going on with the subject title. You never know.
We're gonna talk about erotic blueprints later, and there's one of them that's kinky, and I wish we should do a whole segment on what is Dr. Vibe's erotic blueprint type. That would be so much fun.
Okay.
So
All right.
So yeah, I'm a pleasure coach, and I love working with those who I call been affected by religion. It's my story. I grew up in a religious home, really loving, but also the love was mixed in with a good dose of shame. So I love working with people who have that background, because the shame or really the inhibition, and not everyone registers as shame, but it really was heightened around the area of body and intimacy, physical intimacy. And so that's where the two intersect. Why I love this conversation around religious shame, convert it to soulful intimacy. So we get to be soulful humans and mind, body, soul all balanced out beautifully.
Excellent, and welcome one of the great support. Oh, he jumped back off. I thought he was going to say hi to Kente. I just said hi to Kente, and he jumped back off. No problem. Folks, if you're watching this live or listening to it live or listening to it on replay or watching on replay, if you don't like having fun, jump off this conversation immediately. Okay? This is going to be fun next few minutes. So if you don't like having fun, if you're boring, get out of here. Please, just get out. Get out. Well, and the challenging thing is, this conversation, part 3, it's been so long since we did part 2. So I don't know where you guys want to take it. Do you want to continue from the past? Do you want to put in some new things?
Let's do. Here's the thing. We were chatting about this earlier today. Yeah. Thanks for asking. And
no
really, to me, when we were talking, even a series on the topic, it feels like a series of conversations, and there's so many aspects of religious shame and soulful intimacy that really the conversation it becomes present to whatever's going on in that day. So for example, I do a workshop and we all come in with different things. So I thought it'd be great to just chat about, okay, I know a question that was resonating in my head that you had really near the end was, what the heck is religious or soulful intimacy? Or some, maybe one of the callers had asked that, what the heck is that? So I thought it'd be fun to explore that conversation. And then also a piece around that keeps popping up in the workshops when I do this live in Toronto is the trigger words. And one really great way to know you may have religious shame is, are there certain words that are, maybe heavily religious based, such as belief, faith, sin, these kind of words? Do they spark a reaction in you? And I find that that's one really cool way to know if there's still a little pocket of shame existing, or a giant pocket of shame.
Well, you know what? And I think it's a great place to start with, and just the whole aspect of sin when it comes to intimacy, especially in today's society. So I think it's a great place to take off with. So I'll let you guys get into that conversation, and I'd like to know how it comes up in your workshops, Beth, and the different areas where people come in when you land on that conversation piece.
Yeah, it's we don't jump into it right away. We try to get a comfortability, but it's pretty soon after everyone gathers. So in our workshops, we spend about 3 hours. And it's touching the tip of the iceberg around this conversation. We're only spending an hour in conversation. In the workshops, after 3 hours, people are like, more, please. I'm like, no, you need a break. I need a break. It's intense conversation. So we chit chat, we get to know each other. But then one of the things that's kind of fun, because we are coming from varying backgrounds, is to see our common words that strike something in us, strike anger, fear, even sometimes a nondescript reaction. There's a physical reaction. We can't really put a feeling to it, because sometimes it's a blend of feelings. And so I've got people who come into the room who are Christian, of course, Muslim, Mormon. These are the common ones that show up in Toronto anyway. So I find that belief is a tricky one. Sin is a really, really good one. The word should alone is a really big one. Consent. I'm trying to think of, Bryan, I'm wondering if you can remember. I know we did some of this in one of our discussions we had looking around. Oh, forgiveness. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. I'm curious, Dr. Vibe, did any of those jump out for you?
Well, I want to take it because you have people coming in from various religious backgrounds and beliefs.
Yeah.
And just for lack of the word, the hodgepodge of thoughts and beliefs, just there in itself, when it comes to intimacy, you could spend a whole day on that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. Well, I do often spend not even just what's your religion, but where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a culture here in Canada, but a different culture? Did you grow up in another country? And did you grow up rural or in the city? Because I find that it has variations of how it impacts us around sexuality and other things that are shut down. So I totally agree with you. I love that noticing of how, yeah, we're all a hodgepodge, great word, and yet we're here in that we're in that room because we're all relating to the fact that there's some shame that has us shut down in the area, something that's so natural, our existence as physical beings.
Right. Depends on.
Yeah, just before we go further, we got some comments already happening here. Tony is saying, Beth has such a welcome and warm smile and attitude. So another member of the Beth fan club.
Thank you.
Ethan is saying, sex and belief is kind of a double-edged sword. And Tony says, I have problems with the word faith because I like validity and I question everything.
Love those. Love. Sex. Those. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Totally there. Yeah, there with you.
So do you have that sort of thought process coming from anybody in your workshops, like sex, like even the word sin, double-edged sword, sex, double-edged sword, people having challenges with the word faith in itself? Do those things come up in your conversations?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bryan, I would love to. I know you were in one of my workshops. I'm curious what your thoughts are from that, or just your own experience when we're talking about this all the time.
I mean, all those words, as you mentioned there, Dr. Vibe, can all be loaded words, right? I mean, and for me personally, it goes back to childhood, and from very early on in my childhood, when you start exploring your body, you start exploring, your own sexuality, and then in the family I grew up in, there isn't any conversation around it, so you're always thinking, is sex good or bad, right? If what do I believe in, what don't I believe in? There's some very sort of strict rules you grew up with in terms of you're not allowed to have sex before you're married. And that's about where it started and ended. There was no other conversations outside of that. So you're left with, inside of those words, trying, what is sinful or what isn't sinful, right? There's some hard and fast inside of the Catholic religion that if you're having sex and you're not married, it's a sin. But where are the edges on that? What's your faith belief around that? There isn't that level of discussion around it. A lot of it's left up to you as an individual to sort of make up your mind and guess, and it's just left to your imagination. And you can be, and as Beth talks a lot about, there's feelings of shame because you're not sure for yourself what's right or what's wrong, because there's so much loaded on top of it.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing it back to childhood, because I think one of the big things that you're talking about is the massive void. There's actually a void of conversation. So I try to have conversations with parents, either pre-parent or at a very young age, because we as parents speak to our kids about faith early on. Generally, if we are growing up faith, we want them to, we're instilling our values upon them. That's a whole other discussion, because our core values are our own. Those are our beliefs that we're instilling upon them. But parents call it core, like we're instilling our values. It's really a belief system. And so when we do that, we're talking to them about our beliefs. But actually, when we're speaking about belief, okay, think of us as three levels, right? We're of three parts: mind, body, soul. So like in faith, the conversation's heavily around soul. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of information. And again, it depends how intense your family is. I grew up in a very intensely religious family. So that conversation is happening on whatever your Sabbath or your holy day is. So let's assume it's on those days. But the conversation of the conversation of mind happens all throughout education and school. You're reading books, so the conversations and words and concepts around your mental faculties are happening even more so likely than soulful conversations, depending on your faith, because some faiths actually put soul conversations higher. And then the conversation around body, it will last for as long as the child is in diapers and you're touching their body and you're helping them. And then potty training happens. And then there's like all those ridiculous conversations that adults have at the dinner table that you're like, why are you telling me this about your child? I don't know if you guys, a lot of conversations around body. But then as soon as the child is potty trained, the conversation around body actually starts to drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have lots of words, lots of dialogue, lots of use of concepts in soul, in the religious environment, and in mind, in most environments. But the body conversation starts to drop off. And even because a lot of religions have issues during that teenage, adolescent, prepubescent, right through till marriage, also has a lot of like, do not do this. Basically, do not go, do not enter. And so you have like a generality that this is bad, and then we as a culture don't speak about it. So there's a void. I feel like the words are then attached with all these double meanings, and we're having to place our own meanings, but they're generally bad, wrong, shameful, dark. Anything that's not spoken of starts to become taboo.
Okay. Just going to catch up with some conversations that are going on here. He is saying without proper and honest sex, we reproduce corrupt humans. That's why I think when then another gentleman agrees. Then Ritz is saying, I think that people should have a license to raise children. Okay. And then Ritz is also saying, yet you can still be the perfect parent and the other kids can corrupt your children. So there's a whole cycle of things going on right now already.
Love these comments.
Something has popped up in my mind while you two are sharing about the lack of intergenerational learning, the lack of the questionable attitudes towards religion these days, especially in some of the things going on in the Catholic Church, and just the whole area of sex itself. I put that in a bowl, and I'm getting a mismatch. And I think that when it just seems right now that it's like a bomb has just been put in it. It's all over the place. And there's no values. You were saying, Beth, earlier about instilling values. There's more a pushback of values than an instilling of values these days when it comes to children learning about sex. When we were growing up, it was one way. We didn't push back. And some ways that's good, some ways that isn't good. Obviously, you're dealing with the lack of pushback or the lack of questioning as these individuals have become older, and how it's Go ahead. No, go ahead, Beth.
No, I love what you're actually. I think this might have popped up in one of our earlier conversations. You're alluding to something that's really, really valid. It's like, okay, for a long time, the religious environment allowed for intergenerational teaching. It allowed for parents and adults to teach children, and children would absorb it. It was accepted, generally accepted. And in that context, how it was delivered, and we could go into philosophizing why, theorizing why, power dynamics, etc., of the ruling people in the world. Around why sex was made to be lower and bad, and in those contexts. Now it's like people are actually dissing religion, dismissing and dissing and disregarding and actually mocking and pretty intense. It's actually more common that religion is unaccepted than in the past, where that was the non-norm. It was the opposite. And yet, and sex tends to be all available, all like, wow, everything's fine. But there's no actual clear direction. Here in Ontario, we don't even have education going on, very quality education happening in our schools. So there's like, in some ways, there's a new void. So back then, there was a void around sexual body functioning, like during a phase, how do I actually, what works around sex? How can I be a sexual being and also a religious being? And now it's like, okay, great, I'm sexual, but how can I be a soulful being as well as be interacting with my body? And I see that there's a new void. I that's what I'm taking from what you're saying.
Okay, so
I
go ahead,
just,
Bryan. Go
I was
ahead.
just going to interject. I think today actually I see a double void, Beth, in terms of
Mm.
the void around religion, right? And then I look at, my son is 9, almost 10 years old, and they're starting to talk about puberty in school, but very much it's still geared towards the girls, which
Hmm.
it was the exact same thing it was for me when I was going through Catholic school, right? Um, and there's nothing a discussion around the boys, and for the girls it's talking about their period coming in, and that's about the extent of it in the Catholic school system right now. There's a little bit more, but not much more. So I see a void there. And to echo one of the comments earlier, yet sex is so readily available. So there's all this sex that you can get access to. Yes, your kids can get access to porn very easily, that Kuma brought up earlier, but there's a void in terms of discussion and education around it, in terms of them understanding for themselves what's good for them or what isn't good for them. So I feel, as I say, it's almost a double void is what I see, even though sex looks more readily available.
I just want to jump in quickly here, and the folks in the Get Vocal room, thank you. Keep the comments coming. Fantastic stuff going on here. I just want to shout out Ms. Latina NYC saying, I don't believe in religion. I have a relationship with Jesus. She says also, things change when we leave religion behind and develop that relationship with him. And it makes the sex less of a taboo. Whoa, very nice conversation.
I love that.
And then also on the Periscope side, a big shout out to I Can Do Dave, all the way from Australia.
Wow.
So ET is saying, we as humans think of sex as dirty, filthy thing, yet we are a byproduct of sex. We need to understand sex is not a fantasy. It's reproducing energy, which we studied. Unfortunately, we have studied sex in the wrong ways. Wow. Very good stuff.
Wow. Who's that? ET. Nice.
So, Beth, I want to bring up something, and this may be a whole other conversation, but you mentioned, I have a question. Can one be sexual and soulful?
Oh, are you asking me this?
Yeah, and because you mentioned it, and I went, fun, and I actually typed it down to make sure that I don't know if we want to maybe parking lot that for another conversation, because I think that's
that's exactly what I would love to talk about. I love it. Thank you. So yeah, I appreciate us starting off by those words that trigger us, and I would love to hear from. I'll answer your question in a second. I would love actually, because you guys are brilliant. I love the comments. I'd love to hear what are their trigger words. So I'm hearing even the words religion and spirituality. I noticed those. Absolutely, those kind of come up. Dirty, filth. Oh my gosh, those are good ones. I would just love to hear more words that you react to that are maybe from your upbringing, religion, or maybe from the words that people said around sexuality. I'd love to hear that from you guys. Okay, so your question was, can you be sexual and soulful? That's the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually one of the things I'm advocating, that exactly that is the delicious is when we are mind, body, soul all fully aligned with our true authentic pleasure. Now, authentic pleasure is the key. What's authentic pleasure is what allows us to be aligned for our individually, our mind, body, soul, authentic to ourselves. I think what's gone on I don't want to dominate. I'm curious, Bryan, would you say absolutely yes to the question?
Sexual? Absolutely yes. Yeah. I mean, I know from my own personal experience that I've had the most profound spiritual experience ever in my life was during a moment, well, not even a moment, having a sexually intimate time with my wife. And just the space I went into, I don't even know if I can describe it, but it took me to a place that was beyond anything that I ever experienced in any church setting from a spiritual experience. It only happened once, but it was just mind-blowing. And so I say definitely, and I mean, in that moment, I felt so connected to God, to the universe, to source energy, all in one. And so definitely for me, it was a soulful experience that connected, as you said. I felt my soul connected to my body, connected to my mind, that in that moment I could understand and know everything it felt like. So 100%. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I just want to, so a few things going on here. One, also to shout out to Mr. Wonderful. Thanks for dropping in. There is Rita saying the 10 Commandments, a very important lesson to embed, but organized religions is not good. I understand fellowship being an important part of church and Alcoholic Anonymous, very important tool to people. Rich is also saying, I find most caught up in organized religion to be very judgmental and mean to an extent. So another thing I want, and again, this may be another conversation on top of it, is do you ever deal with clients that have this challenge about intimacy and religion, and then have a partner that is not willing to be intimate with them? So it's another pile on that they're having a barrier in themselves because of their religious upbringing, and then they're with a partner that is wanting to be intimate with them for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's, well, I'm gonna, two cases pop into mind. One is the individual woman situation who is navigating her belief system. I work with women who are in their fine years of life,
Yep.
who have.
Just remember, there's two things I don't talk about with ladies. I think I told you this when we first met. Age and weight. So you can describe it any way you want. I'm not going any further there.
So I'm in that category, and it's like we have come to a place in our lives to get to know who we are more. And as we start to realize that, and so I've worked with clients in this scenario, one of the things that gets to be known more is our body and owning it, and not all of that either shame from religion, shame from media, all that good stuff. And then what do we actually still land on around belief? Because we are oftentimes coming back into our soulfulness. So someone mentioned spirituality and religion. It's like transforming what was from religion that didn't work, that did the shame and the harm, and hold on to the spiritual connection to God, higher power, universe that is our own. And so I walk through clients. I find clients struggle with that because it is like the part that it's the most challenging is with intimacy and religion, because there's such a harsh, like, you're gross, you're bad, you're wrong, like you're sinner, you're evil, like it's pretty intense. And yet it's confusing, because if you're a grown ass woman, grown woman, and you're having sexual desires, or you're literally just realizing, oh my gosh, my body is actually beautiful, I want to own what my body is. So it's such at odds and conflict. When you're a younger woman, you may be more believing, and you ignore the things that you're hearing from yourself. But as an older woman, you're like, that's off. So I have several women who are coming out of that, where they're like really grappling to try to hang on to the thing that was their foundation. Is their foundation, or will it be their foundation? Like there's that real struggling of faith and sexual growth and sexual expression. So that's one. And you've asked, so that's what came to my mind first, because generally that's one person in that relationship that you're talking about. So they're grappling with this journey, and then their partner's over there with really not an awareness of what that religious upbringing caused. Someone, I can't remember, someone commented we shouldn't be teaching our children that young about faith. And that, I forget how they worded it. And it's something I actually also have I would share in that thought, that let's be cautious of what we're imparting on our kids too young before they can actually grapple with it. And so when someone hasn't grown up in an environment where there's a very intense set of guidelines for life, including sexual guidelines, is imparted on you, if they don't understand what that's like, that partner has a hard time dealing with this shutdown partner. Really, and it can really cause a huge misalignment, a lot of misunderstanding, and re-shaming. Rejudging is what I call it, re-shaming, all of that. So yeah, that can be challenging, and it can be navigated. So I'm expressing my empathy. And what's really, really cool is there is a way to navigate through that, like really in a reconnecting with your own body and learning how to navigate what shame is, old shame and current shaming method of communicating. It's really quite brilliant to watch, witness someone get free of that. It's lovely. Why I do this.
It's interesting because as both of you are sharing, since it's been a minute since we last chatted, there's a number of different conversations that are rolling up with me. And I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago at an event with a lady who couldn't have kids. Mm-hmm. And the whole aspect, I know some women feel religious shame because they're not able to have kids. Mm-hmm. And that affects their intimacy because they're so challenged with their own sexual being because they can't reproduce.
Oh my gosh, you've hit something, right? Because one of the main reasons why you should have sex is to reproduce. So if you can't, then what kind of, are you a sexual being? Can you be a sexual being? You're not valued. You're not a whole person. Yeah.
So I just want to, and believe it or not, I've actually met some men who cannot reproduce either. So that's that's a conversation you don't hear of that much that also needs to be spoken about. And Beth, do you ever and Bryan, do you ever encounter conversations like that with any people that come to the workshops at all?
Bryan, I don't want to jump in, but go ahead. Do you have?
I mean, I haven't had that conversation, right? Personally, in terms of people that can't reproduce, but I can speak for myself personally. In growing up with a strong religious background, it was this belief that sex was only for reproduction, and that was the thing I struggled with, right? So I'm only supposed to have sex to have children, right? Then it didn't seem to align with me in terms of when I look at, I believe in a God that creates, that is good, right? That is loving. And so if he's good and loving, he's created this wonderful feelings of pleasure that we're capable of. It doesn't make sense to me that it's only for reproducing and having children. So it was always that struggle, in terms of, well, okay, now that I've had children, is it supposed to stop? Or I'm not supposed to have sex at all until I decide that we're going to have children? So I know it's been a personal struggle around it.
Beth?
I haven't encountered that one too much. No. I find who's coming to me are people who are, it's not been the issue yet. So, yeah. Okay. I would love to share with listeners something, because this conversation can get heavy, it can get serious, it can get frustrating, it can get hopeless, and those of us who grew up in a shameful experience, it's really easy to drop into that, raise my hand for that, to go to the hopeless and frustrating place. So I wanted to share, like we were talking about the workshop, when I'm in the workshop with people, I want to share one thing that I find has people like gain a little bit of like hope. And I didn't actually do it for that reason. And now I do it for that reason because it's brilliant. But the first thing is to talk about those trigger words. So we've kind of been chatting about that. The second thing is to look at, like, really own all the things that didn't serve me, meaning the group, didn't serve us, didn't like elevate my self-esteem around my body, all the things that didn't go well, maybe all the things that have me, angry at men because religions, maybe all of this. So we kind of
she has frozen.
Oh, lost Beth for a moment. Mm-hmm. I mean,
okay. No problem. Gives me a chance to catch up here. She'll be back. She's there. You see, She is fierce tonight. She's always fierce.
Back
Okay.
again.
Nothing's gonna stop Beth tonight.
Magical.
Nothing's gonna stop Beth. Nothing gonna stop you.
All right, so I'll share that because I would love to hear like from you guys, and then maybe from the listeners or the I don't know what you call our awesome people out there. But the things that are like really annoying and frustrating around sex and religion, and what religion has like really put a damp on our. But then the next thing I have people do, so we do that on one side of the board, and it's like I'm like jamming in words, circling repeated words. There's a lot of that, and we oftentimes can live in that place of frustratedness, anger, all that hopelessness. Then we go and we're like, what is the awesome part about religion and spirituality and my upbringing around that actually elevates my ability in intimacy and sex? And people ultimately, it takes them a bit to shift gears, but it ultimately has people like, wow, actually, one of the big things is that they realize they can go soulful, they can go deeper than most people around sex. And so their intimacy can go deep. In fact, it must go deep because they've been brought up or they're drawn to religion to go deep, to look for the depth of life. And so that's one of the brilliant pieces that comes up. There's other brilliant, but I'm curious if you guys relate.
I'll add to that, Beth. If you don't have, I shouldn't say don't have, having that religious background gives you an understanding of soul and what that means to explore and discover your soul and to take other aspects of your life like sex and add in that spiritual element to it. Whereas if you didn't grow up with a religious background at all, it's harder to tap into that, and understand that, so it's being able to say, what are the good aspects of religion, as you said there, because there are some good and there are some positive. And it's like with everything. I know someone was talking about politics earlier as well. She was saying, religion and politics, and we sometimes forget these are all made up by individuals and human beings, and you've got good ones and you've got flawed ones. And so there's all different aspects of it, and fully agree. There's some very good positive things that can come out of religion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see Tony.
Tony's got a really good question.
Yeah, I want to address Tony's.
Yeah, but I just want to catch up here in regards to, I just want to say shout out to Serena Wills on Periscope. Thank you for Herbie to jumping in on Periscope and inviting all his followers on Twitter. Thank you so much. Mr. Wonderful saying, religion is the fail of society as it has shamed us since birth. Mm-hmm. And then he's also saying, finally, we are escaping the bounds of religion and discovering who we can be. Ritz is saying, mind boggles me that this is what kids raised in a Christian home with a Christian pastor for a father would totally neglect and run from this issue.
Yeah.
So now we're up to Tony saying, what about fetishes of any kind? How do they fit into this conversation?
Oh man, I wish we could spend a long time. Great comments, guys.
Don't worry, we
won't wait till next January. Okay, Tony.
That's up to you. Like that, I'm still above ground, but I think it's a great question, and also again another parking lot for another conversation. But Beth, what do you have to say? Answer to Tony's question.
Yeah, Tony, I love it because you're actually hit. So Tony, let me just read that one more time. So Tony said, "What about fetishes, any kind? How do they fit into the discussion?" They're actually perfect because they. So if you imagine the whiteboard, I'm saying in the workshop, right, and people are sharing, okay, how did religion ruin my sex life? Basically, let's discuss that. Pop up all the ideas, and then wow, wait a second, what did actually religion bring into my sex life? Could bring into my sex life? So fetishes are actually real. So I'm gonna expand a little bit. So fetishes, I'm gonna expand to things that are kinky or taboo. Now, fetishes are when they are taken to, now, Tony, correct me if this is not what you intended by it, okay? But fetishes are when you're kind of stuck in a rut of one thing, okay? So it's when you enjoy something that's a little bit out of the normal. It might be out of your normal, out of your comfort zone, but that's actually part of what makes it exciting, the taboo, the naughtiness, But the fetish piece is when it's like, I have to repeat the sequence to make it actually pleasurable for me. So one of my mentors, she uses this example of a client of hers, and I always love it. It's like there was a client of hers who had to wear a yellow rain jacket to actually get off, always. So that becomes a fetish. So that, in my mind, would go into the left column, where when there's so much shame around what you desire that it becomes so constricted and restricted that you get really locked into this one thing. And then, but the really, really cool thing, let's see if I can say this in a brief way. The cool thing about fetishes, or let's broaden it to things that are kinky, things that are taboo, things that feel naughty but feel good, just like a roller coaster. Why do people go on a roller coaster? It's freaking terrifying and exciting. So things are like that. And so the world of going to your edge actually is one of the most healing things to do sexually. It's actually so brilliantly healing. And so when you look at the fact that religion has made a lot of things taboo, a lot, almost everything, you actually have a lot to work with in this area. So I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense, because I may be speaking like at version, like, you know, not 101. I might be speaking at 103. Maybe guys help me out. Am I making sense? Am I relating it close enough?
I get it. I just want to see the audience. Can you type in if you're getting it or not? And it's interesting. You mentioned another conversation. You mentioned this quote, going to your edge to get sexual healing. That's another conversation piece in regards to that. I think that's a whole topic in itself.
You know what? I'm going to even type it out. I'm going to type it out, but it's also this: sexual and spiritual healing. They're both. I'm telling you so Bryan, you were sharing a bit of I'm going to share a little bit of mine. So my journey is I was a really good girl. I really was like,
when was that?
I was. Trust me.
I believe you. You set yourself up for that. So I
know.
And nothing. And I know I do good when I see Bryan smile when I say it. He doesn't laugh. He smiles first, then he laughs.
It's so true.
Didn't know that about myself,
all right.
All right.
For the benefit of the doubt, just give it to me, okay? Give it to me. I was a good girl. Okay. So I grew up. I was Sunday school teacher. I was Bible college girl. I didn't give my parents any headaches. I was that girl, okay? And in it all, I was very shut down sexually, and I really was disconnected from my body. And so I was married, and then during the latter years of my marriage, that was something we started to explore. That was an area of contention. I don't know. So then after that, I went on my own journey to discover my own physicality and reclaim my body. I used to hate my body. Body image was so low, right? And all of this, all my relatedness to my body, to other people's, I couldn't look people in the eye because I didn't want people to see me, the physical me, right? And so there was a journey I went on to reintroduce myself, rebalance myself from mind body. Now, what I didn't realize is I had during that journey really turned away from religion, which was necessary. There were a lot of things that were not serving me, but I also shut my soul down. I really put some like cinder blocks and then layers and layers of cinder blocks in front of my soul. I didn't know that. I really, really didn't know that. And so it's been a reclaiming over this past year. Actually, I've been doing a lot of intense work, and that phrase, going up against your edge to heal your sexuality, actually going up against my edge, which includes doing interviews like this. Like, it's not all sexual. Everyone here can relate to going up against your edge, things that have you grow and expand. And you have to face something about yourself. So for me in the sexual department, because it's such a naked, vulnerable place, I got to heal some of my soul and my body. And so there's more of a rebalancing of all three.
I have just a very interesting question to ask. Have you ever had any of your Sunday school students in any of your workshops yet?
Sorry, say that. No, I would love that. I just caught what you just said. Oh my gosh. If I was, okay, this is funny. You know what the thought went through my mind? I don't pray in the way I prayed. So when I'm going to say this phrase, it's going to sound foreign to me. But if I prayed like I prayed back then, and it's not like I don't pray, there's much more than me in this world.
Right.
I would pray for some particular people in that, and that's so condescending. That's what I hated, when people would pray over me, because it's like I'm broken. But in fact, I go back and I visit my family's church, and I've come to really appreciate a lot of things about that space. For a long time, I couldn't do that. A lot of time, I was a pretty angry person. I was really hurt, actually, and the anger covered up the hurt.
Right.
And then when I go back, now I'm just starting to sit there. It's a bit of research and development. When I'm back in
R&D.
church, R&D, when I'm sitting in the pew. But one thing I do notice is I'm like, yeah, now I remember being, it's like time travel. And then in that space, I do wish at times that I could somehow fast forward someone else's journey. And that's their journey. And so maybe that's not their journey to have. My journey is my own journey.
So Bryan's staying too quiet and smiling too much, so I'm going to get him involved in this.
Thank you.
So Bryan, when you help Beth out, assist her in her workshops, the last one you helped her out with, what percentage of participants were men?
The last workshop, I think it was 2 that I was in. It was 2 men, including myself, and 6 women. Yeah.
What does that say to you, if anything, when it comes to this topic? See, you waited out too long, so it gave me time to really give a interesting question.
I will say this. That was the last one in terms of when we were doing a specific around religious shame and soulful intimacy. That was the one I was in. I mean, Beth would speak more in terms of a total, but then workshops before that, it was an all male audience.
Right.
So it varies. I mean,
so let me bounce it back to Beth. So Beth, when you do your workshops, what percentage would you say on average, men, women?
So I do right now. I'm focusing in on 2 workshops. I was doing a parenting workshop period. And I've never had a man. I had a man on one of my virtuals, a single father. So that was rare.
Okay.
So the parenting was primarily women looking to how do they talk to their kids about sex, right? Okay. So then, but I don't focus on that right now. The other 2 I focus on are the Discover Your Erotic Blueprint and the Convert a Religious Shame, the conversation we're having here, to Soulful Intimacy. What I would say it's probably 60-40 women in the religious shame. And I would say it's about, I was going to say it's about even in the Erotic Blueprint. I don't have, I haven't actually checked that out. And that I'm more curious about, that's so funny, about the religious background and the cultural background, not so I'd never think of gender. And then I also have gender fluid people showing up in my workshops as well.
Right.
So then that's another conversation. But yeah, that's interesting. I would say that there are more females showing up in the Soulful Intimacy one, the Converting Religious Shame to Soulful Intimacy. There are more, but there are male there.
So why do you feel more women? Why do you feel, if anything, that the balance is higher in women in that workshop? And then I'm going to bring Bryan in there after you share.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. In fact, I am only conjecturing. And quite frankly, I wish I could have all the time in the world to study more religions, because I do think that there is more. This is a statement which is unstudied, okay? But there is likely more shame across more religions against women having sex, against women's body relatedness. And again, so I'll leave it there. I'll see what Bryan has to say.
I mean, I would agree with you, Beth, on that. And I think also the part of it is men typically grow up in a conversation around sex that, it's all about prowess and performance, right? And connecting sex to the soulful level is not a conversation that we've even, for the most part, started into, right? So I think men, my feeling, not just from this conversation around sex, but other conversations, men are still catching up in a way to women in terms of going deeper, and evolving ourselves in terms of going beyond the stereotypes and what we've grown up in. So it's, I mean, this could be a whole other conversation,
it's going to be.
but I mean, in a different way. I mean, you know, from the conversations that we had, Dr. Vibe, and when Beth and I were speaking at the Men and Masculinity Summit, you know, I think men have shied away from these types of conversations of any type of going deeper, and have catching up to do. I mean, without going further than that at this moment. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to add another layer now to this question. I'm going deeper. And again, of course, it's happening at the end, so we'll set it up for the next time. What do you feel the effect, if any, has Me Too had on this subject?
Oh, go, Bryan, go. I saw him about
run away. Well, that's the feeling. I mean, having talked to, I mean, part of another men's group that I'm in, you know, part of the conversation is men are afraid. You know, we're afraid to say anything, right? We're afraid to have a conversation for fear that we may get it wrong, right? So I think a lot of men don't necessarily subscribe to, you know, let me back up on that. A lot of men would agree that those men that have abused and sexually abused women should be fully punished for it. But we're not sure where that line is, right? Where the line is. Best in a lot of best conversations come up, what's consent and what isn't consent. You know, we've talked a lot about that. So I think men shy away from that conversation. And I'll tie it over to a conversation that my wife is having right now in terms of white privilege, right? Most white people don't want to talk about it because of fear of offending people, right? And it's this same conversation. You've got to be able to have the conversation. You got to be able to screw up, you know, as a man inside this Me Too conversation, to bring back to what you're talking about, Dr. Vibe. You got to screw up, make mistakes, and go there. And there's got to be a vulnerability on the side of the man to do that. And there's got to be an acceptance on the side of women and other men to allow people around you to screw up, make mistakes, and have that conversation, talk about it to get to a point. If we hide away from it, it's no different than religion over the past of pushing things down and making things off bounds and taboo. Yeah, when things are hidden, that's where all the crap happens. You've got to be able to bring it up. And right now, there's a lot of fear for being able to do that.
I appreciate you for stepping up on that one. Because I think we need to have a whole conversation on that. Because and this is a wonderful conversation. I got ideas like flowing through my head, and just putting it out there in the fact that I think the biggest challenge that you have, both you on this journey, is yes, you want to deal with the soulful intimacy and religion, but then there's the person themselves.
Okay, I love. Sorry, go ahead.
It's like when I deal with the fathers that I mentor. Yes, you want to be a great father, but how are you as a man? There are two separate entities. So to me, that if the person isn't good, you got to find out what's going on in that person before you can take them on that intimacy religion walk.
Right. Oh, and I mean, what I'll add to that, and I think you bring up a good point about the individual, because I think some of what's happened over the past with religion and things like that, you can even put it to politics and so on, where we're all taught we should think and act a certain way. And I don't think there's nothing out there that applies to everyone. I think it's very much an individual journey. I mean, I saw a comment earlier about someone asking, you know, do you think fetishes, or depending what you're into, is evil or wrong? To me, it's an individual discussion. It's an individual choice for a person. And then evil to me is a very strong word, and I can get into a whole thing around that. And what my personal belief in evil is when you turn your back on God and spirituality in general and completely, and just going down a whole different road. That to me and purposely doing things to harm and hurt people, that's when you get into the level of evil. But for the most part, it's an individual journey, and it's an individual feeling what's right for you, what isn't right for you. And Beth brought a little bit about that earlier in terms of beliefs versus values. Values is very much an individual thing, and understanding what your values are and what's important to you and staying true to those is important. And it applies to all different conversations. It applies to this conversation, applies to the conversation of, how you are as a man versus how you are as a father, or how that wraps together. It is very much taking care of understanding yourself as that an individual first.
Good stuff. You know what? I'm going to start winding it down because we could go on forever, but because I've seen Beth just writing down notes like, and this is beautiful because you know what that means? More epic conversations.
Thank you. That was epic. That was.
And I like what Richard said, growth. Wonderful. That's a beautiful thing. And I know both of you have things to do, so I always appreciate.
I just one more thing in there.
Yeah.
And I just think we got to bring it back to fun, right? Because you can't be, I just feel we start layering on this stuff when we talk what's evil, what's wrong, and this and that. And it's even a conversation around the Me Too movement. We've got to lighten up, right? We've got to stop being, I think, overall being offended by things so easily, and just lighten up. Let people screw up. Let things, have fun, enjoy, talk, have these conversations, open things up, and have fun with it, and then we'll get to a better place. So
I'm gonna share one example from today. I'll keep it real short, but it really relates to all of this. So on the large scale, we've got women, we've got men. We've got women who are speaking up. That's awesome. We've got men who are feeling now afraid of how to speak. So we're just at the beginning, and hopefully we can carry it all the way through to the end of reconciliation and then fun and all of this goodness. I have a couple clients who I spoke with, and the woman on our call today, she's like, today was fun and lighthearted. And that's because we got out of our heads and we started playing. And they actually started playing, and it was a game. They played a game to navigate and find some things about themselves and about each other out of curiosity and play. And it made all the difference. They still had discovery and growth, as Coma was saying, yet it wasn't so heavy.
Right.
So thank you, Bryan.
Yeah.
Well, and it's very important that when I do my mentoring with fathers with their children, I always say the importance of play.
Yep.
Very, very important. And that's not only just if you're raising children, but have play in your own lives. If you're having sexual intimacy, please have some aspect of play in that. Because if you don't, see, yes, she does, Rich. Rich has a question. Do you have children, Beth?
I do, and I have this lovely plant from them. In fact, we had a stuffy party. Stuffed animals were all over my living room because that was my Mother's Day birthday or Mother's Day gift. But truly, the gift was that they cleaned it up after.
Now, see, this is what I really love when the questions are starting to get really
coming fast and serious.
Go, Beth. Rich has another question. Go for it.
Oh, wow. No, I don't actually teach anything as wrong. Again, I really relate you to check in what works for you, what's actually aligned with your core values and your life's intentions. That's where the starting point is for authentic pleasure. Is it your pleasure if it's aligned with your values? And that's something we don't generally look at. It's a rare thing to look at, but it really alters everything.
Yeah,
so
there's no judgment about what's right or wrong.
Okay. So she's going, Latina NY says, my son has been masturbating since he was 7. So I spoke to him right away, and the right way and wrong way to do it. That's a good parent.
That's interesting.
I
like her.
Yeah.
She's good people. Like, Latina, do you want to come on just a moment, or do you want to wait for the next conversation? Because there's a whole Cracker Jack box. That's dating me.
Yeah. Because we're laughing.
Yeah. The next one. Cracker Jack box. You used to get the little prize in the Cracker Jack box. Yep. There you go. Well, look, good people. We're gonna end it, but as you see, there is going to be a myriad of upcoming conversation topics with these two wonderful individuals. Latina NYC, I love Cracker Jacks. Where? There you go. There you go. Can you still get them?
I'm sure you can. There's those retro stores on Queen West here in Toronto. I'm sure people if they're gonna make money off it, they'll sell it.
Yeah,
Roncesvalles area, they have that.
If anyone can get a box of Cracker Jacks and bring it on to my next epic conversation, I would be all over you. That would be fantastic. But
I know where to find it, down in the Roncesvalles street.
Yes,
there's an candy shop store. Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Oh, well, look at this. Latina NYC hugs. Beth. Well, look, wonderful.
Yay.
So, folks, thanks again for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us. If people want to find out more, what do they do? How do they do it? What do they do to get a hold of you?
All right, right now, because I'm doing website upgrading and it's been lasting for like eons, as Dr. Vibe would tell you. But bear with me, I got some shame to navigate through, okay? It's my journey too. Anyway, so in the meantime, I'm going to put down my Facebook page and that's where my musings go, okay? I'd love for people to friend me. Let me know that you met me here. Otherwise, I may not friend you. I'm selective.
Oh, Tony says you can get Cracker Jacks at Sam Club's, Costco's, sell Cracker Jacks. Thank you. I am so blessed with a great community. They have the answers for everything. Brian, do you want to share any contact information, or do you want everything to flow through Beth?
Wait, that is it. And that's not even it. Hang on, it's 393. Wait. All right, don't come look for me. Oh my gosh. It's like not knowing your telephone number. 393. Whatever, you'll find me. Come find me.
There you go. Well, everyone, I want to say thanks to everyone who stopped by to make this an epic conversation. We have Latina NYC, Keenan, Tony, Ritz, great questions. There was Herbie. I'm just going to scroll up a little bit to make sure I haven't missed any. ET, thank you so much. I Can Do Dave from Australia. Also had Serena Wills. Again, Herbie, thanks for sharing it out on your Twitter page with your Twitter followers. If I have missed anybody, it's because of my head, not my heart. And as always, I like to say, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. And then finally, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. And you know Dr. Vibe, he's a boring guy. So I have another conversation coming up in a little over an hour on the Get Vocal platform. And this will be with Galen Bingham, who has over 25 years of sales management experience. He worked with companies like Coca-Cola, and he's going to be coming on at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, May 13th, to talk about 9 steps to become the greatest in the world. So looking forward to that epic conversation. Thanks, everybody, for listening, watching, and especially laughing. Yes. We will catch you very soon. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good. And buy your Cracker Jacks.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.